The sea can be cruel, as the first sailors to round the tip of Africa 500 years ago found out. Bartholomew Diaz, blown around the Cape of Good Hope without knowing it, eventually landed 400 kilometres further east, here at Mossel Bay. Diaz was the first European to set foot on South African soil. In the Maritime Museum is a replica of the caravel in which he sailed, as well as displays dedicated to the great 15th century voyages of trade and discovery. Behind Diaz's statue is South Africa's first post office, an 800-year-old milkwood tree. This venerable specimen was already 300 years old when the early seafarers used it as a place to leave mail for passing ships. At sunrise the next morning, our refreshed and serviced train is ready to take us on the next leg of our journey, the 44 kilometres from Hartenbos to George. From Mossel Bay, the garden route officially begins. It's so named for its abundance of vegetation, its variety of scenery, and quite simply for its beauty. This is a coastline of jewels, a fitting backdrop for the queen of the rails.
Here I am in South Africa, the dream of my life. I've never been over to Africa before. This train, all the cars, the engine, all restored, just the way it used to be. And here I am riding back in, what, the 1930s or so. And this is a piece of history.
With clerestory coaches and varnished teak saloons, this was an age altogether more dignified than our own. Gentlemen were gentlemen, and ladies always wore hats. Trains were the way that one got from A to B, and rail travel was not just a way of life, it was an art. The first Union Limited trains were the precursors of today's Blue Train, a luxury express service from Pretoria and Johannesburg to Cape Town, carrying first-class only passengers and mail for shipment to Europe. The 30-hour journey was timed to connect in Cape Town with the weekly mail ship, which sailed from Table Bay at 4 p.m. every Friday. Today, the Union Limited runs again, in authentic blue and grey livery, and as true to the spirit of the original as it's possible to be.
Trains, especially steam, have been traditionally enthusiast type things, and it's very much men only. But the Golden Thread is not like that. It's a tourist train and very friendly for ladies as well.
It takes one back to one's youth, you know, where we love train travel. And that's how I find it now.
I can remember this sort of train in Ireland when I was a girl and travelling to the north, from the north to the south and vice versa, on a more limited way, but with meals being put on the train and one thing or another. It has created that bygone era atmosphere very well.
You see more, I think, by train in a way, because all the lovely farms and the countryside and going through the tunnels and over the big bridges.
Right on schedule, we pull into George, the first station on the Transnet Heritage Foundation's museum line. The 67-kilometre museum line runs between George and Knysna. A steam heritage project it may be, but it also earns its keep as an ordinary working railway, with timber the chief freight commodity. Steam in South Africa was phased out later than in most other countries. Having learnt from these countries the dangers of wholesale scrapping, South Africa set aside a large representative collection of locomotives for preservation. George today is a place of coal dust, smoke and simmering locomotives, a working depot straight out of the steam age. The steam locomotive's voracious appetite for coal is fed from the coaling stage. With its coker pan system, this is the only one of its kind in South Africa. Keeping these filled is an endless cycle of consume and replenish, consume and replenish. It's a tough job, done by tough men.
Ik hou baie van die job, want doen het wel 'n harde job, maar ek hou baie van. Ik hou af van om hulle skoon te maak en hulle blink te maak en so. Dat is my deel van my job. Ek doen nou baie lank al die job, maar weg gewees. Ek het alweer 22 jaar hier op George. Ik weet als die stoom weggaan, dan heb ik geen job meer. Ik voel baie trots op mijn job. Ik voel baie trots op mijn job.
Not far from the station is the Outeniqua Railway Museum, where South Africa's railway history is on dignified display. The country's prestige trains were renowned for their six-course meals, served in elegant wooden dining saloons.
Melon with port, grilled lobster with parsley butter, suprema chicken, brown beef with cream horseradish sauce, leg of mutton with mint jelly, salted vegetables, rum pudding, ice cream chocolate sauce.
Certainly a meal fit for a king. And in fact, a coach from the Royal White Train is also on display. This was imported from England for the royal visit of 1947. The two princesses, Elizabeth and Margaret, relaxed here and played music on the built-in radiogram. With its luxurious appointments, white and gold crockery, imported walnut panelling, the royal train travelled the length and breadth of the country, hauled by that faithful servant of the Commonwealth, the steam locomotive. Fortunately, thanks to a growing culture of preservation in South Africa today, not all her trains and locomotives have been lost in the mists of time. But we don't travel the museum line to Knysna just yet. Instead, the Union Limited takes us inland from George over the Montague Pass and northwards to Oudtshoorn. The Outeniqua Mountains presented a formidable challenge to the early railway engineers of the Cape. For decades, these mountains lay in the path of the through route to the east coast and its harbours. But then the Montague Pass was built, and when the last hard-won sleeper was laid in 1913, the route to the east was finally clear. The pass remains to this day one of the most intimidating railway ascents in South Africa. Through a series of tunnels, horseshoes and cuttings, we climb over half a kilometre in 24. Intermittently visible from the train is the tortuous original road pass, built in 1848. Fellow travellers, swept away by the excitement of this climb, find themselves given to passionate discourse.
You look at a steam loco and it looks vibrant and strong and powerful. If you look at a diesel train or an electric train, you can't really see any engine, it just looks like a carriage. So I think it's the vibrancy and power in the thing that, and the noise and the smell, everything else.
It has been a very interesting thing because there was such a broad spectrum of wildlife, flowers, you know, mountains, and apart from the fact that I'm not a great steam train devotee, I found that a bit interesting too.
I think it's a very authentic 1950s experience. When I was a boy, I used to travel a lot on British steam trains, and this is very like that in many ways. The smoke in the eye and the smell of the train and the feel of the way it rides, the noise of the rails, all those things are authentic. You have to recognise, of course, it's an old train, and it's not like the American train we travelled across the States on. Luxurious, modern, quiet, smooth, air-conditioned. With this, you get the full feel of the environment, including the bumpy rails. So it's great. I love it.